Okay, well, thank you very much. Again, first of all, before anything else, I definitely have to thank our host. Dr. Levine was very, very kind to give us this unbelievable venue for this. This is really like it's a dream come true to be able to give a talk like this in a place like this. And this is like, and obviously any conversation about Trump that's happening today has to talk about Jerusalem a bit as well. So this is extremely appropriate. And this is, and again, I'm very happy for those that were able to come here, especially in the middle of the day. I know it's difficult for people to come, and it's an honor, obviously, for people to be able to come to listen to me as well as our other speakers. Thank you also to the speakers, obviously, for being here. It's a again, this is just wonderful, but all kolakova to David.
All I do is open the door.
Yeah, okay. It's a little bit more than that.
Thank you very much.
But, so essentially, we're going to be talking again. It's sort of a roundtable discussion. The way we did this last year as well. So this is sort of a sequel, and it came out very, very interesting last year. I put it together something very quickly. We had a few people talk at a place also in the other side of Yerushalayim. And it was very interesting. We had a lot of, there was a lot of interest. There was a lot of good debate that was going on in there. But people didn't really know much about Trump then. Trump was only in office about a month and a half at that point. So now we have a lot more information. We have some more questions answered. We have a lot more questions that have come up, and I think it's a very interesting point to talk to, because again, the question from our perspective is Trump good for the Jews? What's that's what the discussion is, and we're all going to have different perspectives on that. So each of us are going to speak in turn. There'll be questions after each person speaking, and we'll see what happens. We'll try to keep each of the talks to be about 10 minutes or so, and beyond that, be maybe 10 minutes of questions and answers if necessary. So since last year, what's happened since last year? Since Trump has been in office, I have a few things listed that maybe I missed a couple. One of them was the State Department saying that they were going to get rid of the anti-Semitism liaison that they had, and now it looks like they're reversing themselves on that. So that was something a little bit inconsistent. First, Tillerson said it doesn't look like it's necessary. Then it seems like legally he couldn't really do that because Congress is the one that really set up the office to begin with, and now he's turned around and said, okay, it is necessary. So it's a little bit unclear how much that's reflected anything. The biggest thing, obviously, that's happened was Trump declaring Jerusalem the capital of Israel. It's obviously a big thing, and we're going to be discussing that briefly, and I'm sure in more detail when everybody else is talking. Trump's decision to severely cut UNRWA funding was a big deal, and I would like to talk about that a little bit. And a lot of the big focus for the past year was the deal of the century, Trump's attempt, seemingly, to be able to finally come up with a way of doing Middle East peace, which is ambitious if nothing else. But there's a couple of other things that I'd like to talk to as well that are a little ancillary to that. But let's first talk about these topics that I just mentioned very briefly. And again, I'm sure that the other panelists will want to go into more detail on this. As far as the Jerusalem Declaration was concerned, I was skeptical to begin with. I was skeptical it was going to happen. And even when it happened, and he said that he was going to move it, but he made it sound like it was going to happen in 4 years after time. No, I was still skeptical, and I'm obviously very pleasantly surprised that it really seems to be happening. It's going to happen on May 15th, according to plan, at the American consulate. His speech was excellent. In my opinion, his speech about Jerusalem was a fantastic speech. I don't think he wrote it for a second. It sounded exactly like it was David Friedman wrote it, but it was a really great speech. It didn't, it made everything very clear. It made everything saying, hey, this has not affected all the peace process or anything that anybody else says. It doesn't affect what Europe says. Nothing has changed, with the exception of the complete fiction that Jerusalem was one day going to be an international city, which is insane, and it was a very proper thing for him to do that. And even that, and again, it was really nice that even after he made the speech, and then all the Palestinians complained and the Europeans complained, he still doubled down and said, okay, it's going to happen this year instead of happening in 4 years. That was impressive. There are a couple of things that I'm a little bit bothered by. One is that he has inconsistent messaging on this, because the original speech was tailored in such a way in which Europe couldn't have a complaint about it, because they said, because he could have said, listen, it doesn't mean that, East Jerusalem can't one day be a Palestinian state. Now he says Jerusalem's off the table, and we don't know what that means. He has a phrase, Jerusalem's off the table. The Palestinians interpret it as saying, oh, okay, all of our fears are coming true, and that all of Yerushalayim is going to, which doesn't bother me particularly. However, it's not necessarily the smartest thing to do from a diplomatic point of view. And this is and it's a little bit strange. It also doesn't seem to that he coordinated this with Europe. And that also bothers me. In other words, this could have been an opportunity to be able to say, hey, the whole fiction, again, it's a fiction. The fiction that is Jerusalem is going to be an international city. The United States State Department's held on to this fiction for 70 years. It's ridiculous. Europe is still holding on to this fiction of the possibility of an international city. It's stupid. If you guys are saying, just like you say that you're determining that East Jerusalem is going to be the capital one day of Palestine, what's wrong with you saying 100% right now Jerusalem's the capital of Israel too? There's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing that hurts the peace process. He could have laid the groundwork. And he could have made himself, look more statesman-like. And I don't believe he did that. I think on the contrary, I think it hurt him, and the possibility, it hurt America. And also, in the way he did it, again, he could have, there is diplomacy, and again, there's a problem with what's happening with the State Department. That's why we have diplomats. He could have laid the groundwork. We need more than just Guatemala to say, oh yeah, we're all for it. We need more countries that are going to say, okay, once you do it, America needs to lead. And if America's not seen as a leader because of how he's treating, how he's acting, then that's a more fundamental point. Let me go quickly to UNRWA funding. Again, anybody that reads my blog knows that I'm not a fan of UNRWA. It definitely should disappear, and it should disappear probably not immediately because but there should be a plan in order to be able to make it fade out. Within 5 years, move the money to governments that could pay for to take over the infrastructure and whatever. But again, the way Trump did it was just cut funds and not say anything beyond that. It was a strange way of doing it, and again, it wasn't done in as effective way as possible. It is an easy argument to make that why on earth should Palestinians be treated completely different than any other refugee in the world. It's an easy argument. The American people would understand it, and the European people would understand it. But he never made that argument. He just said, we're just without anybody noticing, we're not paying UNRWA, this year, or we're delaying the payment. And it was without any explanation, and it just looked muddled to me. So that bothered me. I like the idea, but I wasn't happy with the execution. And then there's the deal of the century. If the leaks are accurate, some of it is very, very good. Good cooperation using the Arab states. The refugees would presumably be taken care of with the Arab states. With them, almost all of what Bibi would want, all the security in the Jordan Valley, and almost everything that Bibi would want was in this thing, with the exception of, if the leaks are accurate, Jerusalem. It's a big exception over here, saying that where we're standing right now is going to become part of an international city. That is really unacceptable. And I'm bothered by this. I'm not sure if it's Trump or if honestly, I don't know if that's Bibi. If that Bibi was saying, hey, if I get everything else and I get security and stuff like that, then I can let you guys. I don't know, because I never felt, this is maybe just my own ignorance, I never felt that Netanyahu had such the same ties of this, where we're sitting right now, as other previous Israeli premiers. I don't know if this is Trump or Bibi or what's going on with that, but it's certainly very problematic, any way you look at it. My major problem right now with what's going on with Trump is that it's with Obama specifically and deliberately tried to split the Jewish community of America, the American Jewish community. He said, he elevated J Street to a level that nobody ever would have considered of being, and he said, you are the Jews that I think represent the mainstream of America. They ran with it, and he was, he essentially split. He said, you have AIPAC, we have J Street. J Street is my good type of Jews, and those are the other bad type of Jews. He didn't quite say it like that, but that's pretty much what the implication was. Trump has also split the Jewish community, and perhaps in a worse way, because right now anybody who has any liberal leanings whatsoever hates Trump, and they hate everything that Trump does reflexively. And beyond that, even within the more Republican right-wing Jewish community, there's a significant number of Jewish never-Trumpers that are also severely split with this whole thing. So this is you want, again, like AIPAC conferences last week, you want Israel to be a bipartisan issue, and it's really turning into a far right-wing Republican issue, which I don't think is good for anybody. The other thing which I implied slightly before is that, with Trump's moves and not with this, but with everything else, is the U.S. losing international prestige altogether? Europe right now is looking at America as like, listen, let's just wait this out until this joker's out of office, and then we can go back to the way we were before. And if America loses prestige, Israel loses, because it's because Israel's still at this point, even though Bibi's doing great stuff in order to try to diversify Israeli support and everything, and he's doing an incredible, I think, brilliant job politically as far as that's concerned. We still have a problem. America is still is Israel's biggest client, and or the other way around, whatever. And it is and losing that, if America goes down in importance in the world, and everybody starts looking down at America, Israel's not going to be gaining from that. So this is an issue. But that's just briefly my introduction of how I like to frame the issues. Now I'd like to start just bringing up our panelists.